Okay, so this is a follow-up to my video, Atrocities Against Ukrainian Children. And the reason I'm doing this is because, as I suspected, some Ukrainians are a bit pissed off at me because I'm not rattling the swords over these things. And I'll tell you, if they're real, I will be the first to get out there and do something about it. Okay? So don't get me wrong about this. But what is an equal atrocity to these horrifying events is the resistance to investigate them immediately. If they hesitate even a week to investigate these, which they did, it is an equal atrocity. She should be tried for war crimes. This woman who was fired, because if she indeed hesitated even a week to investigate any of these and verify whether they are true or not. Now, that's not even discussing her interfering with the corridors for refugees to leave, to evacuate the war areas. She actually interfered with them. That's part of the reason she was fired. But she should not have been fired. She should have been arrested. She should have been arrested for war crimes. So let's go ahead, because it's not just Russians who are committing war crimes. It's Ukrainians also. And I'm talking about Ukrainian officials like this woman. Let's read the article. I'm livid about it. And especially after hearing the blowback from Ukrainians, which I expected to get. Not all Ukrainians, just a couple of them. Okay? One of them was unexpected. All right, let's go ahead and listen. I'm going to read this. This is from Newsweek, July 28th. No, it's not July 28th. Well, it says July 28th, but it can't be. Oh, this article was by Adam Staten on the 31st of May. Okay? Ukrainian official fired over handling of Russian sexual assault claims. I've seen no end of references by Ukrainians to these assault claims. They're not assault claims. Some of them are murder. Some of the claims are murder. It's not just assault. Assault is just beating or something like that. It involves rape. It involves pedophilia. It involves murder. And it's done in front of the mother sometimes. That's some of the claims. You heard it in the video, the last video. Go watch it. Atrocities against Ukrainian children. Now I'm going to read you this article. Ukraine official fired over handling Russian sexual assault claims by Adam Staten, May 31st, 2022. A Ukrainian official has been relieved of her duties, let me close that, over her handling of reports detailing sexual assault allegations made against Russians in Ukraine. On Tuesday, the Ukrainian parliament, the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, removed Ludmila. Now, I read some of this before. I'm going to read the whole thing. It was only about half of it I read. Ludmila Denisova, the parliament's commissioner for human rights. The commissioner for human rights was committing violations against humanity because she did not investigate these immediately. This atrocious of a crime needs to be investigated immediately. No hesitation. And also, she interfered with the evacuation of refugees. The Parliament's Commissioner for Human Rights, from her post, she was removed from her post. According to Ukrainska Pravda, no new appointment has been made to fill the role. The move to dismiss Denisova came after outrage about the wording used in public reports about alleged sexual assaults committed by Russians, as well as the alleged dissemination in those reports of unverified information. Unverified information. Despite accusations from Ukraine, the Kremlin has repeatedly denied that Russian soldiers committed war crimes or sexual assaults during the invasion. Whatever they say doesn't matter. It needs to be investigated. Needs to be investigated. You can sit there and say whatever you want about something that you don't know anything about. But until you've investigated, you don't know anything about it. All you know is what people are claiming. Last week, Ukrainian media outlets and journalists signed an open letter in which they requested that reports concerning rape and sexual assault be published with caution. That's in quotes. particularly when involving children, according to an English translation of the letter. This is Ukrainian media outlets and journalists who made this open letter protesting this. Newsweek newsletter sign up, that's a link, okay. The open letter also stated that, quote, "It is important to understand that sexual crimes during war are an instrument of genocide." It is, and I discussed that before, how especially female children is especially the most specific target of genocide, okay? And I explained because of the differences of the role of men and women in terms of the production of children and their investment in it, and that the woman has so much more of an investment in the birthing of a child than the man, that the murder of a woman is more specifically genocide on the people, and the murder of female children is the murder of women, but before they've reached the productive age. So here it goes. An instrument of waging war without rules, but they cannot serve as illustrative material to inflame the emotions of the audience. So it says, let me say it again. It is important to understand that sexual crimes during war are an instrument of genocide, an instrument of waging war without rules, but they cannot serve as an illustrative material to inflame the emotions of the audience. Now that's a little vague, and that's arguable, okay? They're saying that you can't use these sexual crimes as examples of what? Illustrative material of what? If it's being done repeatedly, then it definitely is, individual instances can be used as illustrative material to inflame the emotions of the audience. Absolutely it can. So I'm at odds with what they've said. I don't think they thought that out. Okay, let's keep going. The letter from the journalist indicated how reports from Denisova went into great detail, public reports, great detail about the alleged rape of children, some as young as 6 months old, by Russians. All right? The alleged rape of children. The letter also criticized Denisova for including details of cases that the journalist said were unverified and asked her to, quote, check the facts before publication, end quote. Now, the way this is worded, it sounds like some were verified. Yes. It says the letter also criticized Denisova for including details of cases that the journalist said were unverified, of including details of the cases that, now it may be that all the cases were unverified, or maybe just some, it's vague, okay? And asked her to, quote, check the facts before publication, end quote, and, quote, disclose only information for which there is sufficient evidence. In other words, if you don't know that this detail really was part of the incident, you don't include it in the public report. No. Because even if you say alleged in there, people will pass it on, taking out the word alleged, and claim that it happened. And then it passes on and passes on and passes on. They say, well, you know, she released this, or she said alleged. So the things that you don't know for sure are part of the incident should not be released publicly. All right, next thing. The letter went on to say that the information put out by Denisova's office is regarded as factual by the media and is then used in articles and in speeches by public figures. They're not saying that the things she put out that were unverified are factual, as you might read that at first as bad writing. But what they're saying is that what comes from her office, people assume, they forgot to put that word in, assume are factual. They take it at face value as being verified information. And then it's used in articles and in speeches by public figures, including world leaders. Keep going. According to the online UKR Inform news platform, one member of the Ukrainian parliament, Pavlo Frolov, provided a number of reasons why Denisova was removed, including, these are quotes, the numerous details of unnatural sexual offenses, the details of unnatural sexual offenses, the numerous details. That she had way too many details of unnatural sexual offenses and child sexual abuses in the occupied territories, which were unsupported by evidence and only harmed Ukraine. So he's saying that, first off, she went into too great a detail on too many of the cases publicly, and that those, many or all of those details, and the actual offenses themselves, the abuses, were unverified, unsupported by evidence, that there was no evidence supporting it. It was hearsay. It was things people were spreading around by word of mouth, and only harms Ukraine. Because if there's no evidence, then how can you not believe that it was fabricated? Out of all those cases, you must have some evidence. And if you have no evidence, then it sounds like people are fabricating these things to inflame people's emotions unnaturally. I mean, like, even more so. And you can't be inflaming people's emotions against people with false accusations. Get them to be emotionally livid about the invasion and about the destruction of property and the actual civilians who were actually killed, including children. But don't fabricate stuff in a false testimony, bearing false witness against someone. The Bible says in the 10 Commandments that is wrong. That's one of the 10 fundamental rules of life that God gave us. And if you're breaking it, you're going to hell. You need to repent. You need to stop and repent. He also stated that other reasons for her removal from her post included, this is quote, repeated failure to perform her duties related to the establishment of humanitarian corridors, as well as, another quote, counteracting the deportation of adults and children from the occupied territories. She was herself interfering and stopping the evacuation of adults and children from the occupied territories. She was. It says so. Counteracting the deportation of adults and children from the occupied territories, in addition to not performing her duties of creating the humanitarian corridors. That means she's guilty equally of any war crimes that happen in those territories during that time to those people. And she should be arrested, she should be tried, and she should be executed. I'm dead serious. She should be arrested, she should be tried, and she should be executed as a war criminal. That's Denisova, who was a Ukrainian minister who was fired. She should be tried with the Russians, who will be arrested and tried for war crimes. Because she is responsible for the death of unknown number of Ukrainians, including Ukrainian children. Let's keep going. Ukrainska Pravda also reported that more than 230 of the 450 members of the legislative body voted in favor of removing Denisova. Well, that's not a large amount. That's barely a majority. 225 is a majority in this case out of 450, and 230 voted to remove her. It's unclear who will take over the post at this time. That means that a little under half of the parliament, or what exactly is it? The Rada, Verkhovna Rada. A little under half of them are in favor of war crimes committed by Ukrainians because they didn't vote to remove her. A little under half of the Rada are in favor of war crimes by Ukrainians because they didn't vote to remove her when she is clearly a war criminal. She should have been arrested, not just removed from her post. And the fact that she goes free today is an offense against Ukraine. It's a blot on Ukraine. And it needs to be corrected. She must be arrested and she must be tried as a war criminal in cohorts with the Russians, because she was clearly cooperating with the Russians. And even if she is patriotic, whatever, her actions were cooperative with the Russians. And she knows better. She was in charge of humanitarian human rights. Let's keep going, okay? You can see I'm livid about this. Ukrainska Pravda also reported that more than 230 of the 450 members of the legislative body voted in favor of removing Denisova. They're trying to put a spin on it to make it look good. It's not good, because almost half did not vote to remove her, and by that, we're supporting war crimes. And they need to be removed. That 220 who did not vote to remove her should be removed, and they should also be investigated. Maybe not arrested, but investigated. Because they did not stand against war crimes by their own members. Let's keep going. It's unclear who will take over the post at this time. That was in May. Newsweek reached out to the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine and the Office of the Ukrainian Commissioner for Human Rights for comment. But that's it. There's nothing there. And this person who quoted the article says the letter also criticized Denisova for including details of cases the journalist said were unverified and asked her to check the facts before publication and disclose only information for which there was sufficient evidence. This is what the person says, this means she was making up atrocity stories. Not necessarily. It means she was accepting at face value gossip. Was at, you don't know that it's not gossip, but until it's verified, it's gossip. It says, women like Ludmila will lie to you as look at you and will do it with a clear conscience if they think the lie will forward their agenda. That's exactly what's happening. And I've complained about this before. And I've warned Ukrainians about this. A lot of Ukrainians are very good. Most of them are very good. But you've got some individuals here in the population, like in any country, who will lie in order to further their agenda. That winning is the only thing that matters, not how you win. Because if you win lying and committing atrocities yourself, what are you putting in place? You're putting an immoral, corrupt society in place. Doesn't matter if it's yours. It's still immoral and corrupt. And we don't need more of that. So we need the Ukrainians who are moral, not immoral. We need the Ukrainians who are honest, not corrupt. And those who are corrupt and immoral need to be arrested or deported. They cannot be put in positions of power, like this woman, Denisova. And this person wrote, I think they know for a fact soon they will be found out, so they probably try to secure their own positions. So there's a lot of negativity here. And then this woman wrote, she acknowledged that she made things up to make Europe act and give weapons when she saw that, for example, Italy was tired of Ukraine. Quote, just a week after her dismissal as the chief of Ukraine's rights panel, Denisova, in an interview to a local Ukrainian publication, admitted that she lied about the incidents of rape. She said that she exaggerated reports of sexual crimes by Russian soldiers on Ukrainian civilians in a bid to convince the world to provide weapons and pressure on behalf of Kiev's administration. She must be arrested. She must be arrested. She must be. She is an enemy of the Ukrainian nation. She's an enemy of the state, and she must be arrested. She cannot be allowed to go free. This woman must be arrested. She abused her power. She lied. She made Ukraine look horrible. And not only that, she committed false testimony as an official in the Ukrainian government against individuals and against another nation in time of war, causing even greater harm to Ukraine, not only by Russia, who probably heard this and thought, well, what are we going to do about this? God knows what their decisions were based on hearing these lies that she made up. And God knows what the European nations are thinking of doing with Ukraine after seeing her having lied about these things. And now how many people are going to believe a Ukrainian official, after finding out that she was a head of human rights. For God's sake, she was a head of human rights. And she was lying to the world. The things that she made up, who could even think those things? Who could even come up with those? Who has such a perverse, sick imagination that they could invent those things? She must be arrested as an enemy of Ukraine. So you see, this is what we're facing here, is that most Ukrainians are good. They're good people, really good people. But then you have individuals like Denisova who maneuver their way into power, then abuse their power, and all their evil and wickedness comes out and injures Ukraine. We must be far more careful who we trust power to, of any sort. Now you know how to pray for Ukraine, especially. You've heard concrete case here, how to pray for Ukraine, about the leaders, that those who are corrupt will be found out, will be arrested or chased out of the country, and that those who are honest will be entrusted with the power. May the Lord bless you as you seek Him with all your heart.